Hello, Algebra 1. We're going to go over our 9.4a samples for March 25th. We'll need a calculator for our last problem, but for the first three samples we're going to do, we won't need a calculator at all. So on sample 1, we're going to solve for x squared equals 144. The first thing we're going to do is divide both sides by 4 so we can get the x squared by itself. Over here I am working out what 144 divided by 4 is. That is 36. So I'm going to then need to figure out x squared equals 36. What's the value of x? We know that 6 times 6 is 36, so that's going to help us in our thinking. For our next step, we're going to take the square root of both sides. And notice when we take the square root, of course, we are going to end up with both a positive and a negative root. So the square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 36 is both positive and negative 6, because we need to report both roots because they work. And that completes sample 1. Sample 2. An extra step in this one that we didn't have in the first problem. So we're going to want to get x squared by itself. The first we're going to want to do is subtract 18 on both sides, and that gives us x squared is equal to negative 4. Now it's time to take the square root of both sides to get that x squared down to x. And of course we get a positive and a negative root, but the catch on this one is that we're trying to take the square root of a negative number, and there is no answer on the real number line to the square root of a negative number. So we'll stop at this point and say x is no solution. Sample 3. Again, we're solving for x, and only a few steps will be down to our value. First, we add 20 to both sides of our equation. Again, we're trying to isolate that to x, so we're going to undo that minus 20 by adding 20 on both sides, giving us 10x squared equals 98. Next step, we need to undo the 2. It's attached to that x squared with multiplication, so we're going to divide both sides by 2 to arrive at x squared is equal to 49. My last step will be taking the square root of both sides. This is a perfect square situation. When we do take the square root of both sides, the square root of x squared is x. And if we think in our head 7 times 7 is 49, we're going to know that the square root of 49 is 7, and we need both that positive and that negative root, so x is positive or negative 7. Our last sample will take us into using our calculator. So know that once we get down to the point where we have to find the square root, we'll use our calculator to help us out. So our first step, we're noticing we have 6x squared minus 9 is equal to 39. We're going to add 9 on both sides to begin the process of isolating our variable. That gives us 6x squared equals 48. Then we're going to divide by both sides by 6 to undo that 6 that is multiplied against the x squared. That'll give us x squared is equal to 8. Then we're going to take the square root of both sides to undo that square on the x squared. We will take the square root of both sides. That'll give us x. And over here, we know we're going to get a positive and a negative answer, but we don't know exactly what the square root of 8 is. It's somewhere in between. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. So we know it's somewhere in between 2 and 3. On our calculator, when we key that in, we're going to see on our display 2.828427, and then there'll be other values that continue for the numbers where I put the dots. We don't know what they are. We actually are not interested in finding out to that degree of accuracy. We're just simply going to round off to the nearest hundredth. That's where the 2 is. 2 places past the decimal point is where we'll round. The 8 tells us to round that up to 3. So that 2 will become 3, and then we're going to say our answer is x is equal to positive or negative 2.83. So kind of the standard protocol on any of these problems where we're finding the square root is to round to the nearest hundredth unless you are told to do otherwise. Okay, so that should help you prepare for the quiz on this lesson. Make sure that these samples are in your notes and that you're ready to proceed with the quiz, and we'll see you next time.